Welcome everyone to the Outdoor Educating broadcast show here on YouTube. Great to have you with me. And today we're going to take a look at facilitative mentoring that meets extraordinary experiences. And we're going to unpack them. We're going to take a look at what is an extraordinary experience, put it on a continuum to look at. Look at one of seven characteristics that you look at that helps you to create extraordinary experiences. And it's the term consequential. So we'll be going over that. Then we're going to unpack, take a look at facilitative mentoring, not so much in terms of a deep dive into it, but more from what does it mean and how might it link to extraordinary experiences. And then there's some tips and reminders connected to some tools and techniques that I thought that I would bring to you today. And so that's our agenda. Look forward to having you ask questions if you wish through the comments section below, and let's see what happens. And before I do jump into that, I was out for the walk with the dog this morning, so this is sort of like an outdoor moment, an outdoor minute. And I was enjoying the walk, and for some reason I started to pay attention to what was around me, because sometimes I might walk and just enjoy it broadly, but today I put a little bit more specific intention into where I was walking. And I saw a piece of styrofoam, and I went, hang on a minute. And I almost walked by it, and I wasn't really thinking. I went, no, hang on, I got to go pick it up. So I picked it up, and as I was picking it up, it was starting to break. So I had to grab one of the doggy bags, you know why they're used, and put it in there. And as I took another couple of steps, I saw another piece of it. And as I kept walking along, I kept seeing something else and something else. And before I knew it, I was reminded, hang on, there's a bag in a tree along one of the paths. I wonder if it's still there. So I took that path along the creek, and sure enough, there was the bag. And I hadn't picked it up earlier because it was in a very precarious area. It was very wet. And today, because it was a little cooler, I was able to get at it and grab that bag. And before I knew it and got home, the bag was full of things that I had found along the way, water bottles. And um, I actually found a political sign. Someone, where they put their name up and they say, vote for me. I found it blown away off into the trees. I just happened to see the whiteness of the back of it. So I guess from a ceremony point of view, I would encourage, as you walk, sometimes it's important to pick up those cigarette butts and those pieces of paper, and even a water bottle that you might find, and bring them back to the garbage can and let them be processed. So that's just an interesting insight, because one of the things that I'm reminded of today, um, this is my reflection point, was what am I attending to? Am I being with attention? Am I attending to things? And it just sparked me as something that was really important. So I thought I would share it with you today. But let's get into this notion of what is an experience, what is extraordinary experience, and then move towards the facilitative mentoring. Now, the word experience, I have played around with for many years. I have put in a good 55 plus years of interaction with nature, the outdoors, the outside. I started off as a summer camp counselor and worked my way up through a number of other different kinds of activities. I was a wilderness remote first aid instructor trainer of instructor trainers. And I was a whitewater rafting guide, trip leader, so I took care of the trip. So I've done lots of things in the outdoors and enjoyed myself, and a lot of different kinds of activities here and elsewhere around the world. And so experience was something that I really took a deep dive and looked at, and what did it mean? And for today, I just like to share and remind you that experience is actually a noun, it's a verb, and it's a something. So let me share with you what that's about. So the notion of a experience. So you might be saying, okay, well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up an experience, and for that I'm going to need this equipment, and then I'm going to do it on this day. So it's something you're planning. It's an experience. It hasn't actually happened yet. And then you think of to experience. The verb form is, what do I want someone to experience? And that helps you to think about the action outcomes that you want to weave into the activity, the experience that you're creating. And then there's the experience. And I think of that as, what is the something that has come forward because of an experience you're creating, the activities to experience that you're asking people to go through, and therefore there is the experience. So often what we do is we brief into an experience and what you're going to do, the to experience, and then you debrief out of the experience. And I know that over the years, I've had lots and lots of the experiences. Some have been challenges, some have been great supports. Things have hindered me, things have helped me. I've seen some really beautiful things, and I have seen some things that I not would not want to see again, nor would I ask others to see. War is a very ugly thing, and I have my own stories to share around that, and maybe another time I can bring that forward. But the notion here is that there is what are called good, great, memorable, remarkable, and extraordinary experiences. So I bring this continuum to you just to sort of highlight there's some good experiences, and we have lots of good experiences over time. And then this continuum gets you up to this notion of the extraordinary. And I sort of think of good and great and then into rememberable or memorable. And I use that because you're going, oh, geez, I remember that experience, what I went through, what I saw. And then remarkable is sort of along your timelines, you might mark out, that was when that happened, and that's when that happened. I'll give you a really good example. One of my really memorable, remarkable experiences that I call an extraordinary experience was that I took a photograph of a child on a swing, and the backdrop was the Himalayas. So I'd actually maneuvered myself so I could get the shot of the child in the swing with the mountains in the background. And as it turned out, the child was more of a silhouette, and the mountains were in full sunlight. And it's one of the ones that I have in a print form that you remember you used to put them in slide projectors, or maybe I'm dating myself here. And it was one of the ones that I always showed when I shared the stories of extraordinary experiences that I've had around the world. And therefore, this notion of uh, what is this extraordinary experience? So here's a way of looking at it. It's a very generic way of looking at it, because one of the things about extraordinary experiences is, for the most part, they're subjective. They're with you, and you can share them because you're looking to give meaning to them. And if you're with someone, then a meaningful conversation can unfold. There's this meaning moment that's there for you as you take it in and share the oohs and ahs or something like that. But there's a sense sometimes you can't always explain that experience to someone. You just sort of look at each other and you nod and just, okay. We may not even talk about it. We just might take it in. And the other thing is that the senses, the sort of that wells up within you, this extraordinary feeling, the connecting to the meaning of that experience, is you're not always sure that you can explain it scientifically. Now, one of the ones that came for me was on a beach, and I watched the green flash of the sunset. And at that point in time, I went, wow. It was that, and not everyone who was with me saw the flash. And we were just, what are you talking about? And I was trying to explain it. What are you and one other person had seen it and said, oh, that's the green flash that often happens when the sun just sets, just goes beyond the horizon, and helped me understand a little bit more about it. So there was a scientific explanation, but at the beginning of it, I did not see it as something scientific. It was, oh, wow, look at that. What nature, what the outdoors can bring to me. And I just had this overwhelming feeling that was it was just so wonderful. Even with the explanation, it still stayed with me because I can still see it in my mind's eye at this point in time. Now, another way in which an extraordinary experience might come up for you is through something like a dream that occurs. Sometimes I link that to, people call it déjà vu. Sometimes I'll have a dream and I'll go, is this happening? Is this something that's going on? What's taking place here? And sometimes that can become an extraordinary experience because you're going, well, I think I know where this is going to lead me. And sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it does lead me in that direction. So it's kind of fun to have your dreams come into your reality. So those are a couple of examples of some base generic ways of looking at extraordinary experiences. Now, why are extraordinary experiences important? And there's three things I'd like to share with you right now. And this is not all of it. There's more that you can certainly find if you dig, and maybe even with what I share, you can go, well, hang on, that I could take that out, make that number 4, take that out, make it number 5. But the the key here is that I just wanted to give you a little bit more deeper understanding, appreciation, sort of some of the qualities, characteristics of extraordinary experiences. So the first area I want to do is just the psychological, mental to physical kind of connection. And it's about awareness. And remember, I shared the story earlier about walking with the dog and collecting the garbage as a ceremony today. And the awareness of an extraordinary experience, while I may not call that ceremony of collecting garbage an extraordinary experience, that green flash of the sun setting, that child in the swing with the Himalaya mountains, there is this awareness of a vastness. When I'm looking at the sun, I'm looking at the Himalayas, a vastness. There's a scope to it. There's some deeper concepts that are at play here. And this awareness and scope is often what becomes important from a psychological, a mental, looking at this extraordinary experience. The other aspect of it is sometimes that extraordinary experience provides a challenge to us of, can I explain it? Can I dig into it? What actually is happening? Is it true? Did I see it? Kind of idea. And what it does is it helps you to more understand who you are of the world, and maybe who you are for the world. And it's really about getting you into some more mental processing and finding meaning for you. And you're digging in a little bit more, and you're tracking some kind of like fibers and threads and strings and cords and ropes. You're attempting to find what's going on. You're tracing the picture of what it is that you have seen. And this can actually happen. I've shared with you this, the vistas one, but it's happened to me in places where I've been in a lecture, and it's just such an enthralling lecture. And the presenter has been able to do such a wonderful job of bringing me into what it was that we were learning, the topic that was going on. And I think of that as sometimes in my writing classes where I go to learn a little bit more about writing because I want to write these fantasy novels. And being able to think about the world, and I get into it when the presenters sort of get you going in that, and it sort of feels like an extraordinary experience from that sense. And sometimes I'll use this example, a team building activity. For some that have gone through it, they might go, wow, there's something here. Where other people in the group go, I didn't get what you got, but setting up an experience, these are the things that you want to do, and what did you get out of it at the end of it? And that was actually, well, let me see, a good 15 years, 20 years of my work was setting up team development activities. And my task from within was to, from a psychological, mental, physical, was can I make it extraordinary for the people who were there? The next component of that psychological is also what it does is when you have that extraordinary experience, there's a certain amount of humbleness and caring, um, generosity that sort of comes to the foreground because, yes, you want to share it, but it also brings this other way of being forward. But at the same time, some of these extraordinary experiences that you might have and someone's with you might go, I didn't see it. I actually got too cold doing that activity. I didn't enjoy it whatsoever. And you're going, well, I thought it was great. So sometimes the experience when shared with someone else, and that's why the second point that I wanted to make is the 2+ relationships view of extraordinary experiences. All right. Because what you're doing here is about a group, two or more, and from a family point of view, going on a holiday. You might think it as a parent that you've created an extraordinary experience where you're going, what's going to happen. But other members of the family might go, I didn't see what you saw, and this not kind of activity that I want to do. And so there's a bit of a flip side that goes with that. But at the same time, wow, it can be a way to bring the whole family together. And sometimes in an outdoor experience, that's where the family can get together. As a whitewater rafting guide, I've taken many families. And one of the things that I did is if I had an intact family in my raft, I helped them learn how to steer the raft. All right. And I got the kids involved, the mom and dad, and before they knew it, I was just sort of sitting there in the back, not really doing a lot, and they were actually guiding the raft down the river and having a lot of fun. And at the end of it, the cheers and the camaraderie and the hugs that unfolded sort of lent me to think that it was an extraordinary experience for that family. So that's a way of looking at that 2+ relationship is there's a sense of bonding. So friends can do that as well. That's a community event you might go to, a musical festival. There might be a sense of an extraordinary experience happens with a group that goes into the festival or to the community event. And I think that what happens is that people are able to share the stories of gratitude and presence and inspiration, enthusiasm and certainty that came about because of that experience. And when you can share those conversations, you can also help. Maybe someone didn't see it and they saw the hinder aspect of it. And the more the group saw the help, and then through conversations, there might be able to find a way for that person to go, it really wasn't a hinder. Or maybe someone thinking from a help point of view, oh, I can see how it hindered for you, and have a conversation again from a support point of view. The third one is I've touched upon this in the other two, but I just wanted to emphasize again because of the work that I did from a workplace educating and workforce learning perspective, this group and team development. the key thing about the creating the extraordinary experience is the applicability. Does it apply for what it is that they want to learn and get out of it? And sometimes that eludes people, and that's what I have to help those who I'm helping to create these experiences to understand it. But also is that when I get with the group, there has to be a certain level of fitness, yes, from a physical point of view, but fitness from what does it lead to? And that's where the briefing comes in. What is the potential? Where is this going to lead to for you so that as you engage, right, and you are giving them opportunities to do some continuous reviews, connecting the points so that when you get to reflection, especially at the end, through the debriefing, one can actually see the story of what took place unfold. And there's times when it worked, more times than not, because I took great effort in doing it. But there are times that it didn't. And one in particular was I was at a hotel, one of the fancier hotels, and I was working with a group, a corporate group. And I'd given them instructions, please come prepared. We're going to go outside for a good hour of part of the extraordinary experience. And not everyone paid attention to that. So I actually had someone, well, two people actually. One gentleman arrived and he was wearing his sort of penny loafers. And I said, you can't join this activity. It was unfortunate because he didn't bring any other shoes with him. And then a young woman came and she had heels. And I said, I can't let you go into the activity. So the two of them went and had a coffee together and had a great conversation, I guess. I understand afterwards. They saw that safety element was there for them, and they said thank you at the end because they had a great conversation. So you got to pay attention to what's going on. So from an outdoor educator, outdoor practitioner point of view, this extraordinary experiences I've been sharing with you, there's a couple of other points that I just like to make to sort of draw it into your world and to take a look at it. Because from an extraordinary experiences point of view, there's your business perspective of it, so that maybe this is what you're going to be known for, is the kind of experiences, the extraordinary experiences that you create. Then there's the actual user experience of those extraordinary experiences, and through testimonials and evaluation, sort of picking up what happened that worked, and the flip side, what maybe didn't work. But there's also the environmental, ecological perspective of the extraordinary experience. Uh, how did you leave where you were? Is it in a worse position? Is it better than when you came in? There's times where, as a business, I actually asked some of the clients to help me clean up a fire pit that someone had left, and we cleaned up a little of the area so that it was better than when we arrived. And they said thank you, is because they hadn't thought about it from that perspective. And so it was a great sort of connection to the extraordinary experience about from a team point of view. Another thing is how can you weave in truth, trust, and transparency? And I'm going to make a connection here to social media because I think it's one that can ground us here. And truth, trust, and transparency. If you think about social media is know and like, that's the truth part. So if you know and like what you see, like on the screen in terms of the image, you know and you like it, in a sense, there's truth there for you. And therefore, from a trust, integrity, and connecting, caring, and fairness, you say, well, okay, I think what I'll do is I'll comment and share. That's the transparency aspect of it. So, in the work that you're doing from an extraordinary experiences point of view, can you bring in this know, like, trust, comment, share? Because that's what you're going to be facilitating as you're moving through. Can you actually get this truth, trust, and transparency to unfold in front of you? And I think you might catch that's a good segue into looking at the facilitating and mentoring aspect. But just before I do that, remember I mentioned is the word consequential. From an extraordinary experiences point of view, is it consequential? Have you set it up so that there is some sense of relatability? Is it far reaching? Is it significant? Because if it is this consequential, what it will do is it will set up triggers and prompts and ways for you to bring to life the extraordinary experiences through this consequential lens. And by trigger, I mean it's sort of a mental spark to drive attention. Is oh, it's a spark. It's consequential, bringing your attention to something. But there's a prompt here that can you get some emotional connection to it so that you can highlight something and bring to the foreground the feelings, this cognitive interpretation of the emotion, not from the sense of it's an extraordinary experience is because it brought an overwhelming or an underwhelming aspect of emotion to it. That's not, but it brings, oh, okay, there's some joy here, there's some curiosity, there's some ways here, not fear and loathing, okay? It's more about how is it that you can bring an emotional interpretation, bring out your EQ, and that's what the prompts are doing. So let's look at this aspect of um, consequential. So this is one of seven. So as other videos go along, I'll get into the second, the third as we move into other videos. So I'm just going to tap into some of my notes here. So you'll see me looking down because I really want to share the importance here about being consequential for you as an outdoor educator, outdoor practitioner. I know you're working with adults, but you may be working with youth as well. So this still applies. Now, the key from consequential and this notion of linking about truth, trust, and transparency is that in many ways you're sharing your voice, your mastery, and your position based on your lived experience. Because if you're there as the educator, the practitioner, you have some lived experience. And through your voice, through your mastery, through your position of sharing, you're bringing something consequential to the participants, the learners, the team, whoever it is that you might be working with. And what you're doing is you're encouraging them um, to share the insights that they're getting as well. Because if you can tap into that, you can tap into some of the stories that they're sharing with you. But also, what you're able to do is share more of your stories to connect. And stories is one of those great ways in which to heighten the extraordinary experience aspect because you can help to bring out the emotions aspect of it. So let's take a look at a trigger here from an outdoor educator point of view is a trigger that might happen is you might give too much too soon. I've seen that happen a lot. When I was younger, I said, "Well, here," and I wasn't paying attention to what I was seeing, and the participant was becoming overwhelmed, and you could see confusion. So that prompted from the participant point of view, yes, this overwhelm and confusion, but it also, without really saying it, there's a sense of, am I worthy to be here? There's some doubt that starts to take place. And I figured that out as I looked at what is the consequence of when I do give too much or maybe even too little. Because what you start to see, feel, sense is the person's withdrawing. They may go quiet on you. Facial expressions of, I'm not sure I get what you're saying. For me, it's that sort of quizzical look and a little head tilt is that's when I really pick it up. But this one I learned, and it was as we were doing a walk. I noticed that some of the people were slowing their movement down. And I had to figure out something's going on here. So I went back and had a conversation with them. I said, well, I didn't get a chance to really understand what you were talking about back there. So I was still thinking about it, and you'd already started moving along. And I went, oh, okay. So what it did was it got me to say, okay, am I asking him to drink from the fire hose? You know that metaphor. And that's not what I want. What I want to do is how can I trickle in the insights and find out if it's landing. And one of the ways was to usually ask, what meaning did you get from what I just shared? And people get into the conversation with you, and then you have this sort of a collaborative conversation starts to take place. Then you know you're into an extraordinary experience, and it can happen on a rafting trip too. I've had that happen with me. And what it does is it just reminds me is, okay, how do I want to have people experience the verb experience? So the experience I want them to have at the end is experience. How do I think through it to get the action outcomes so that they have the extraordinary experience at the other end? And it just helped me in terms of figuring out what works and what doesn't. And that's why I wanted to share just a little bit about facilitative mentoring with you today, because it's one of the educating approaches that's of such value to the situation. So I'm going to take a look at facilitation and mentoring. So there's facilitating and mentoring. The facilitation aspect, this is one of the ones that I actually learned at the very beginning was how to facilitate, how to draw ideas out of people, asking just a couple of questions and then get them into a conversation with me so that what I could do is tap into their insights and their ideas. Because if I got their words, then I could use their words with them. And when you use the words of someone else and you're getting them involved with what you're doing, it touches their heart. Because if you use your words, you're probably at most going to touch their head, maybe their heart a little bit. But if you use their words and bring that to a connection, then that really helps out. Okay. So what I do is I use their words very much as a starting point, and then from that facilitating and drawing those ideas out, I can move into other educating approaches, of which I want to talk a little bit about the mentoring one. Okay, but it's what's important here from a facilitating point of view is that within you're attempting to draw their insights and ideas to the without, to that place where will I not share? Because when they share, then you and that person have a between moment, which then leads you to being together from this experience. So if you think about it within, without, between, together, you can get to a place of beyond. So if you go back to I experience, to experience, the experience, what you're doing is you're using this as a way to go, okay, what I need to do is an experience here. I've got to create an experience. All right. So if I'm going to then get them to experience it, I have to think about how am I going to get that within, without, between, so that as we experience together, right, between together, I can then get that extraordinariness, that beyond aspect to unfold with them. So I'm hoping you can see with the facilitation how important that is. But I will give you a caveat. I've seen people say, what I'm going to do is let's just do a little facilitative activity. I want to get some ideas from you and then proceed to just turn it around and start explaining, telling them what's going to actually happen. And then they might say, is there anything you want to add to it? Most people won't add anything because they go, oh, I think you just told me everything I need. So if you're truly going to facilitate and ask for their insights, you may have to live through the silence of your question. And there's one group one day, I actually waited 2.5 minutes between the time I asked the questions till we actually got a conversation going. I'm not saying you have to wait that long, but I did it as an experiment because normally you have to wait a good 15, 20 seconds. If no one's going to ask, you may have to just reframe it and get them involved. Now, the mentor piece, now this one's an interesting one because mentor is about a two-way trusted alliance between the mentor and the mentee, the learning, the participant, the protege, the apprentice, whatever word you may want to use. So in the outdoor education, outdoor practitioner, let's call it participant, is that from a mentoring point of view, you don't normally think about it as something that you're doing in the activity, but I did find a place where it actually plays itself out. And it's very, very important if you understand that it's a two-way trusted alliance. And what you want to do is set up an opportunity, an arrangement, and a connection structure relationship, a place in the day or the activity where you're interacting with the person or the group. And I used to do it around the meals. And what I would do is I would encourage if anyone had a question for me that they wanted to tap into what I know about the activity or even my own lived experience, I presented myself in a way is that you could ask a question. And sometimes, depending if it was multiple days, maybe the first day I'd be with the group as they were sitting, and then maybe the second, third day I might just sit a little bit away, and I would have people ask me questions, not something necessarily about the activity in and of itself, but maybe something about my own lived experience and why are you doing the things that you're doing, and I was able to use my mentor tools and techniques at that point in time. And what it was doing was helping them to ask great questions. And that's what mentors do is they help the participants ask great questions. I could do a lot of that when we were rafting is because it was sort of a closed area. And I would always get into conversations with them and get them asking questions about what they saw, asking questions of me, and just being able to get into some kind of conversation. And it always ended up is that people would come off the raft going, that was a great trip, learned so much, appreciate who you are, and the little tidbit you shared about being in the outdoors. And it was just a way for me to bring the mentor-esque and the facilitating when I was rafting, but I do it when I'm doing my walking outdoor experiences as well. And there's something here that I would share. When you mentor, what you are paying attention to is the participant evolving? Are they moving forward as though they are gaining something? Sometimes participants are there, just get involved, do what they need to do, leave. But if you can see the opportunity through a mentor lens that the person has some evolvement. Now, it could be the wow of the extraordinary experience. It might even come about because of the meaning they derive from the extraordinary experience. It might even come from the conversation that they had with you when you were doing just a little bit of mentoring with them. So look at it from that perspective and see what unfolds for you. Now, I think there's something else here I want to just add into this. Mentoring tends to have sort of a one-to-one flavor to it, but sometimes sitting in that circle and someone's asking questions, it works. You can use a mentoring tool or technique. So a 2-to-1, maybe 3-to-1, 4-to-1. But if you're attempting to walk into a circle and say, I'm going to use a mentoring technique, it may fall a little flat. That's why the facilitation is there and get them into conversation that way. Now, as I move towards close, I just want to remind, we talked about the extraordinary experiences. What's experiences? The to the component. The extraordinary experiences of good, great, memorable, remarkable, extraordinary, and some characteristics of it. Talked a little bit about the element of consequential, one of 7 that I will go over. and just did a brief review of facilitation and mentoring. But if you were to ask me, so what else, now what, um, then I think what you're doing is you're tapping into what's the time, effort, and money of taking what I've learned here and putting it into um, my action, and to take it and create action outcome statements. What is it that's here? So let me share with you a couple of things. One, check in with your reflection in and on, because this notion of consequential and this extraordinary experience and facilitative mentoring, just check about your reflection in what you're doing and then step back and take a look at it from an on perspective. That will give you some answers to your so what else, and now what. Another thing is, did you engage in collaborative conversations with the participants? And collaborative in this sense is, could they still be assertive and cooperative with you and didn't feel as though you were putting them down or anything and they went quiet or withdraw? But it's collaborative, as they could give their perspective and you could have your perspective, and you cooperated and enjoyed what's taking place. I think of that from the team development, because there's sometimes people um, don't always agree with what you're doing. And therefore, how can you lean it still into collaborative so that that person can share what they're thinking for the benefit of everyone? The other thing is, are you feeling what's unfolding? Not just thinking it through, but what's some of the feelings that you have? And I go back to the gratitude, the presence, the inspiration, the enthusiasm, the certainty. Are those feelings there for you because of the extraordinary experience you created, or the one that you went through? So don't give up on what you feel, because there's a lot to understand around the feltness of what you've gone through. So there's the sense of the felt aspect of the safety, the felt leadership, and that's something I'll go over on another day. And the other thing is, remember this, is that others influence you and you influence others. So I could say to you right now, I influence you at this point in time. If you comment, like, share, subscribe, do that with this video, then you influence me, because I can learn more from your comments about what works, what doesn't work. And that just advances my continuous learning and to improve my practice. And I so appreciate that. And I would encourage you to help me out from that perspective. The other thing from this so what else, now what perspective, is just remember that these extraordinary experiences, sometimes there's a factor of time and location. It may happen in a moment, as it might happen over a morning and afternoon, over the course of a 5-day trip. As you don't always know how that subjective element, what a person takes from it, or even yourself takes from the experience that's there. But one of the things is that the longer you're with others as an outdoor educator, outdoor practitioner, the more you can bring to light, to the path, to share your wisdom about extraordinary experiences, and enjoy them yourself and enjoy them with the others. The other thing I would just give to you as a reminder, all right, with extraordinary experiences, remember, it's sort of like two ends of a stick. Okay. There may be challenge and support there. There may be hinder and there may be help. Remember the penny loafers, the high heels, everyone else was ready. Okay. It was two ends of a stick. I had to take care of both ends of the stick, and it worked out. And sometimes people may be in the extraordinary experience and think this is a hinder, and they're scared, and others think, hey, this is helpful. This is really getting me thinking it through. And how do you balance up those two ends of the stick? So don't give up on that stick, that way of looking at it, and seeing it as a way in which to help you organize the extraordinary experiences that you're asking people to have with you. So with that, that draws to a close, and I reach out and I say thank you. Again, please subscribe to the channel. I always appreciate seeing that. And next week, what we'll be doing is we're going to take a look at instructive coaching And we're going to look at the second characteristic of the extraordinary experience from this notion of trigger and prompt, and what does it mean for you as a outdoor educator, outdoor practitioner. So I look forward to seeing you next week, again, Saturdays at 10 a.m. MST, Mountain Standard Time, here on the Wealth Learning TV YouTube channel. So with that, take care and enjoy everything outdoors.